All righty then. Now, just for a little disclaimer, we are recording today's session. And let's get started, everyone. All right, what's on the agenda today? So as I mentioned, we're definitely going to go through some key educational points, no different than some resources and even tools in which you will be able to take with you and be able to apply in the field. We're going to start off with what is electrification specifically and why electrification matters. So understanding the ultimate role and why the state of California is pushing that initiative, the impactful role of electrification, building electrification in general of within the scope of the residential homes that we're applying it to when we're retrofitting homes, communicating the value of electrification, performance and troubleshooting of electrification appliances or units, including as well as how to address those common concerns about electrification. So certainly touching on a couple of myths and facts in which you can take with you to be able to confidently answer those concerns that the communities are posing to you in the field. And then last but not least, a little bit of an additional resources and or information on rebates, incentives, and fundings available to you. What is electrification and why does it matter? In definition, it is a very generally high level. The definition of electrification is the process of using electricity to provide services that were previously met by other energy sources, for example, or that is fossil fuels. The concept at the end of the day is to decarbonize. Experts agree that electrifying buildings is one of the most viable and cost-effective strategies to combat climate change. Additionally, replacing fossil fuel power appliances, for example, your natural gas and or propane fueled appliances with electrical or electric alternatives. For example, the heat pump technologies are just in general an electric resistant appliance. And then lastly, utilizing electricity to generate those sources for us. So on the right-hand side of your screen is essentially a little bit of an of a glimpse of how electricity is generated. As we can see, we generate electricity in many different forms of power sources through wind turbines, hydroelectricity, geothermal energy, and of course, solar energy. An overview on decarbonization. So what is decarbonization? In the previous slide, we touched on decarbonizing and what essentially, in a nutshell, in an action approach, what decarbonizing is, but what ultimately is the term decarbonization. So decarbonization is the process of reducing or eliminating carbon dioxide, CO2 emissions to mitigate climate change. The concept is to reduce or eliminate carbon dioxide emissions that result from human activities, primarily by decreasing the use of fossil fuels and increasing the adoption of low carbon and renewable energy sources. Moreover, when replacing fossil fuel powered appliances, of course, with that is the electric alternative. So a little bit of an insight of when we are speaking to decarbonizing. Once more, the process of decarbonization is reducing and or preferably eliminating the goal, right? Reaching that net zero goal that we have in place. And that is reducing or eliminating the carbon dioxide emissions that are being released into our climate. So when we're talking about carbon emissions or analyzing carbon emissions from that of buildings, for example, It could be, of course, your retail factory style, right, of emissions that are being released. We're talking about vehicles. Vehicles can release emission into the air, no different than even our common households, single family residents, mobile homes, multifamilies, commercial buildings are definitely one of, indefinitely the one of the leading contributors. Buildings account for 40% of global carbon emissions. So a little fun fact there in that once more, hence why the emphasis on building that is building electrification at the end of the day when we're talking about electrification as a whole. Climate change and carbon emission impacts. So fun little fact we just learned, right, in the previous slide, 40% is that of comes from buildings, those emissions. So when we're emitting those carbons into the air, why is it so important to reduce those carbon emissions? Ultimately, as we've heard throughout, whether it's social media, newscasts, education within school settings, the reduce of carbon emissions, ultimately, yes, it impacts the climate at the end of the day. It impacts our climate. Many different ways of how that impacts from environmental. So that is in which it affects our weathering events. We have rising temperatures that are increasing, leading to more frequent and severe storms throughout the United States. The other layer of impact is the economy. When it comes to energy, higher temperatures increase the demand for cooling and can very much disrupt energy production and distribution, which then results into higher costs and reliability issues. Another form of impact when we aren't releasing those carbon emissions, health issues. Whether you're residing within the Central Valley, the Bay Area, the Northern, the Southern, it's inevitable in which we may be finding ourselves with respiratory problems or heat-related illnesses. So just being mindful in which how carbon emissions impact us, on the day-to-day, on a week-by-week, on a month-by-month, from environmental to an economy stance, no different than even that of our health. Energy sources, that is, of course, fossil fuels. Fossil fuels, there's a couple different or a few different types of fossil fuels. Coal, so burning coal for electricity generation is one of the largest of those carbon dioxide emissions that we emit. Next up is going to be oil. So oil combustions, primarily in the form of gasoline and diesel fuel for transportation. And then lastly, one of the more commonly, of course, found within our perhaps residential home, that is, if you're not already fully electrified, you have already fully electrified your own building. But that's the burning of natural gas for electricity and heating, which then, of course, emits and exposes us and our climate, right, into those carbon dioxide and methane. A little fun fact, at the bottom there, California is the nation's second largest natural gas consumer. Texas is number one. Why electrification matters. A little bit of a just high glimpse. We've talked about 2 slides back of the impact in which releasing these carbon emissions, how that plays a role in our environment, how that plays a role in our overall health, let alone as well, of course, financially, what that cost is. So why electrification matters? Case in point, improves our indoor air quality at the end of the day, no different than we're talking about the impact in our environment outside of our home when we are electrifying our home. We are also actually reducing, right, that recycled air that's traveling perhaps in our ducting systems when we do have on that of either our heating and or cooling elements. So you're also going to be seeing that co-benefit within the comfort of your home, adding that added layer of safety, and that's improving your indoor air quality. Once more, I just touched on safety, so it increases the safety and comfort within your home. And then simultaneously, right, one of the many co-benefits to electrification is going to be that we are also contributing and doing our part in reducing those greenhouse gas emissions. In reducing greenhouse gas emissions, we are supporting renewable energy and energy efficiency through increased safety, that we're eliminating risks of gas leaks and explosions. Improved air quality then reduces those harmful pollutions or pollutants from combustion. So what are we as the state of California doing to be a part of that solution? Well, California's climate action strategy has essentially been tackled, and it's being delivered in many different avenues, starting off with our key legislation and policies. So within even us, within the state of California, from a legislative perspective, we have already implemented and approved these policies to advance the implementation of clean energy alternatives. We have Assembly Bill 1279, Senate Bill 100, Senate Bill 1020, AB 3232, and of course, Senate Bill 1477. Aside from that legislative, right, a standpoint, additionally, we also have our governor, who has been setting those bold clean building goals. And the ultimate intent or purpose is to accelerate the deployment of clean and efficient fossil fuel free buildings. There is already a roadmap of targets that we would like to hit with, of course, by 2030, Governor Newsom's 6 million heat pumps in buildings to be installed, delivered throughout the state of California. That same year, there's a separate goal that we are aiming to meet, and that's 3 million climate-ready homes. These are new builds. And then lastly, on our little timeline here of goals is going to be by 2035, we aim to have 7 million climate-friendly homes. A little not essentially disclaimer, but more of like a little asterisk side note under that graph chart, with at least 50% of funding directed towards those disadvantaged communities, so our underserved, under-resourced communities. Diving a little deeper into our California state goals. To achieve its environmental targets, California is now prioritizing the buildings where we live and work, which, as a reminder, we touched on a couple slides back. 40% of the state's greenhouse gas emissions come from that of building. In short term, for within, by 2030, so that's right around the corner, that's 5 years from now. Greenhouse gas emissions, the goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to 40% below the 1990 levels. Renewable energy, we are aiming to increase deployment of renewable energy sources and energy storage solutions. We're also looking for the electrical vehicles, EVs, significant uptake supported by extensive charging infrastructure. So establishing those many accessible resources to those who are purchasing those EVs, those electric vehicles. In medium term, by 2045, greenhouse gas emissions, we aim to achieve carbon neutrality, oh, I'm having such a challenging afternoon. Achieve carbon neutrality and cut greenhouse gas emissions by 85%. Clean energy, we are aiming to reach 100% renewable and zero carbon electricity, with the following target being decarbonized infrastructure. So that is the transition to sustainable practices in transportation, industry, and residential sectors. Now, our long-term approach, 2050, so 25 years from now, greenhouse gas emissions, we aim to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 80%. Sustainable economy, ultimately the goal. So we want to ensure that economic growth aligns with environmental sustainability, creating millions of new jobs in the green economy. The impactful role of electrification. So what role does electrification play when we are talking about decarbonizing residential buildings? What does that look like? Before we get into the details of what that looks like in our home, let's take a step back and have a little bit more of a better glimpse or understanding of what exactly is building electrification. Building electrification is the replacement of fossil fueled equipment, for example, that of your space heating, water heating, and cooking. So replacing those fossil fueled equipments or units with electric alternatives. In other words, we're simply removing fossil fuels from the building's energy use or reliance. Once more, that important question, why? Why is it important? Why are we aiming to electrify our buildings? So decarbonization experts agree that electrifying buildings is one of the most viable and cost-effective strategies to combat climate change. So the term electrify or electrification is essentially just that fancy word for fuel switching, in other words. So when electricity is generated using a clean and renewable energy source, electrification actually becomes a strategy for building decarbonization. What does that look like within your home? There are a few standard household appliances that emit these emissions within your home. So combustion of natural gas from traditional furnaces, boilers, water heaters, and refrigerators emits greenhouse gas into your home. Natural gas can also actually leak during extraction, transportation, and even from appliances within buildings. We can have gas leaks. Many traditional HVAC systems, especially the older models, require more fuel to produce the same amount of heat. So they're working harder to deliver more. Some electric heating systems are powered by electricity generated from fossil fuels. And then the older electric heating systems can be much more efficient, can be much more inefficient. Greenhouse gas emissions are changing our climate and affecting our health. So once more, reeling into the why electrification matters, what are our options, how is this impacting at the end of the day, who is reaping the benefits, and in essence the goal and what we aim to achieve is for a cleaner, healthier, sustainable future. Poor air quality concerns. Main air pollutants, particulate matter, nitrogen dioxide, the sulfur dioxide, the ozone, and carbon monoxide are main air pollutants. So these are emitted through combustion of cooking, lighting, and heating. Those three are a major source of poor indoor that contribute to poor indoor air quality. Prolonged exposure to air pollutants can have serious long-term health impacts, especially for children and the elderly. And this is actually, we actually took this from a USC Children's Health Study. Furthermore, part of that statistic indoor air pollution contributes to an estimated 1 in 6 asthma cases in California. 1 in 6. Children in homes with gas stoves are 42% more likely to develop asthma symptoms. So when we're talking about, not only that of the poor air quality that's being emitted, outside of your home, let's, so to speak, when we're talking about the ozone layer and how that affects, right? We're talking about smog. More often than not, we fail to consider within the comfort of our home and how that's been impacting indoors rather than outdoors as well, right? So, very, very mindful key information to take in and to take into consideration. Most of us, our home is our sanctuary. We spend more time there than we do perhaps elsewhere. So certainly some facts and educational items for us to consider when we're talking about, the comfort and the safety of our home indoors. Air quality regulation entities within California, we actually have established organizations who contribute to advocating for these regulations for our own benefit of that of our safety. We have CARB, which is the California Air Resources Board. We have Coalition for Clean Air, Environmental Protection Agency, or also known as EPA, South Coast Air Quality Management District, as well as the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. And there's many more other organizations who continue to serve as that of essentially our advocates and who are pushing for more regulations, in order to allow us, the UNIs, to live in a safer environment. Safety. Fire safety. When we're talking about electrification, we touched on the safety of within how those emissions are affecting the quality of our health. There's other layers of safety to also take into consideration when we are educating our communities' fire safety. Reduce risks associated with gas leaks, explosions, and fires. Additionally, modern electric appliances follow strict safety standards, significantly reducing fire risks. So when we are taking into consideration of replacing your natural gas or propane fueled, for example, stove, and when we're replacing that with an all electric, we are doing our due diligence in reducing or mitigating those fire risks. Additionally, part of the safety component for us is going to be operational safety. Many modern electric appliances have built-in safety features, for example, automatic shutoff features, temperature control features, and these types of safety features reduce the risk of overheating and accidents. I am one guilty of it, in which I start boiling water, for example. I'm a multitasker, probably have slight adult ADD at times, completely forget that I have, that water sitting on the pan boiling. And by the time I remember and I come back, that water's probably almost gone. No different than I am guilty of having left a pan heating in oil. So when you're talking about those built-in safety features, I am one, and I can attest that I greatly benefit from those safety features. Electric appliances do not produce toxic fumes. Electric systems provide more stable performance and are less prone to malfunction compared to older gas-based systems. So essentially, the less gas you bring into your home, the safer it is for you and your family. Building electrification. So we touched on what is building electrification and what essentially that looks like within your home. What is the concept of building electrification? We're going to take a little deep dive into a little deeper dive into what exactly creates carbon within homes. All release carbon dioxide and other pollutants like the NOx during combustion and contributing to indoor pollutions. So essentially here what you see is a graph of the breakdown of a little statistics in 2019 that was made. And this is a breakdown within California of residential natural gas consumption per household. So as we can see here, you have your more commonly running units within your home. You have your water heater, your space heating, right? Whether that is of your HVAC, your dual pack, your split system, your mini split. Well, not mini split, we're talking about carbon releases here. Cooking, your dryers, no different than even then, you know, extending into the miscellaneous items, such as that of your pools, spas. Evidently here on our graph chart, we are looking that we are noticing, we see here that water heating contributes to 59% of the consumption. So essentially, we use our water heater more than we're utilizing or perhaps our water heater more, yet it is the one actually that is consuming or releasing the most, contributing to those thermal releases. So looking at that chart and essentially understanding better the behaviors, right, or the needs, so to speak, within a residential home, we have been able to identify once more the most not only commonly utilized appliances within your home, gas appliances within your home, but once more, which ones are consuming the most and or releasing, right, emitting the most of those emissions, those unhealthy emissions. So particularly, we're looking once more at water heaters. We're looking at the clothes dryer, and we're looking at electric or the cooktops, the ranges, along with HVAC. So what are solutions or alternative solutions for those gas appliances? We're looking at heat pump technologies. Heat pump technologies within the HVAC world, that can be in a heat pump dual pack, that can be a heat pump split system, or if inadequate ducting or no ducting system is present in a home, then we have an option of heat pump ductless mini split systems. We also have an alternative option of heat pump water heaters, the electric and or heat pump clothes dryer, as well as the electric resistant or induction cooktops. So essentially here in a nutshell are four of potential options, alternative options for us to be able to offer our communities when it comes to fuel switching, replacing their natural gas and or propane fueled appliances for an all-electric, a cleaner alternative. What are those benefits of fuel switching, right? What are we looking at in which if we're giving up the natural gas and the propane and we're going on electric as you know, community member or an individual who's taking this into consideration, I would very much want to learn and understand what benefit am I getting out of this at the end of the day, or within not only my home, but then as well as, of course, doing my part ultimately for the world we live in. So once more, they are electric appliances are much more efficient. For example, heat pumps can be up to 4 times more efficient than traditional gas furnaces. We're also talking about cost savings. At the end of the day, we face communities in which some members or residents are on fixed income. So we're also talking about cost savings and how that affects you in a positive way financially. So cost savings due to, because they're so efficient and due to their efficiency, electric appliances often have lower operating costs. An example, heat pumps can significantly reduce heating and cooling costs. So in essence, a couple slides back, we touched on how older furnaces, older units have to work, you know, 2x, 3x, 4 times more. They have to draw more energy. They're requiring more to keep up with the output, right? The advanced technologies that are offered today actually deliver the same performance with less energy, right? Thus making it more efficient. The other benefit to electric appliances is it lowers your maintenance costs. So when we're talking about a long-term maintenance, not necessarily service, but maintaining and keeping up with the maintenance of these appliances, electric appliances tend to have fewer moving parts and essentially are simpler mechanisms overall. We talked about the health and safety at the end of the day, because when we're talking about fuel switching, from natural gas or propane to an electric appliance, we are essentially eliminating and or reducing the reliance on gas appliances, which can significantly lower now a household's overall greenhouse gas emissions, right? Depending on how far we're going with fuel switching. If we're keeping that, if we're fuel switching the water heater going from a natural gas to an all electric, but we're keeping the natural gas range, for example, where we're reducing it, but we're not completely eliminating it, correct, within the home. So, just some factors to also keep in mind. Lastly, on here, it increases safety and improves your health. Once more, right? I feel like those two go hand in hand. Lowering greenhouse gas emissions, guess what? We're increasing your safety and we're improving your health. Indefinitely, electric appliances reduce the risks of fire, of course, as well as removing those pollutants from your home. So hence, increasing your safety and improving your health. The infamous question at the end of the day, what are heat pump technologies? When we're talking about heat pump technologies, we have in the market, we have a heat pump dual pack. I have a heat pump dryer. I have a heat pump water heater. But ultimately, what is a heat pump? How does it work? How is it beneficial to me at the end of the day, me depending on a heat pump and the way its mechanisms of how it functions? In essence, heat pumps are very essential for building electrification. Because again, we're talking about that fancy terminology of fuel switching. Benefits of heat pumps: they are efficient and versatile. That's what they offer. Once more, much more efficient and provide, and they can still meet the demand of providing both your heating and your cooling. So not only, again, is it same performance, right? Same output in a much more efficient manner. The cost and comfort at the end of the day for heat pump technologies, it offers higher cost savings with improved comfort. One thing, of course, that is a commonly question or not concern, I wouldn't say concern, but something to take into consideration ultimately within the cold climate is heat pumps can actually use electric resistant heating elements as a backup method during the very cold weather. So after about, if I recall correctly, probably in the high 30s, 30 degrees, that when temperatures do hit probably high 30 degrees, if I recall correctly. Heat pump technologies, the heat pump water heater, for example, can be a hybrid. It's a hybrid. It's a smart technology as well, where once it hit a particular temperature outside of its environment, it picks up that it hit less. The weather outside, cold weather, hit less than X amount of degrees. That unit will actually switch to electric resistant to be able to offer you, the homeowner and or the tenant, maximal output of continuing of performance at the end of the day. So just knowing that these heat pumps, do come equipped at the end of the day with this backup mechanism to ensure that it is still ultimately, again, continuing to perform with no hiccup, and in delivering your needs on demand, no different than that of if it was a heat pump or a natural gas field appliance. Another layer, as we can see the diagram on how heat pumps work. So in essence, if you think about your refrigerator and how your refrigerator works to keep your groceries, right, your beverages cold, it works like a refrigerator, but in reverse. So heat pumps actually transfer heat from one place to another rather than generating it directly on the spot. Essentially, for example, gas furnaces create heat, whereas heat pumps move heat. So they're actually bringing, whether it's bringing in your external environment, bringing in those air molecules, separating the air molecules through its coil as it's navigating through its coil. It's working to separate those air molecules, and through its coils, built-in coils, for example, within, let's say, a water heater, those coils are then harnessing the heating elements of what it just pulled, right? Because even in the cold winter, there's still some heat molecules within the air. It's working to extract and separate what it wants, what it does, gets rid of, the cold of what it doesn't want, keeps the heat, sends it through its coil to just warm it up, and an output, right, to boil your water and or to deliver your heating mechanism, for example. An educational video. Yes, there should be audio, and we tested this earlier, so let me pause it real quick and correct that for you guys. One moment. Let's try that one more time. Technology.
Irina, if it helps, one thing that you could do is stop sharing and then reshare again and include the sound.
Yes, I did that, and it's still not. And it's interesting because we did test this earlier, and it did. It's the also share system audio. And like I mentioned, we did test this earlier, and we confirmed audio was going through. Let's try this again real quick. Here, let me try this approach real quick. Someone can please confirm if there's audio. No audio. Ay, ay, ay. Thank you. And that's odd because we tested this before we went live. Okay, I think what I'm going to do, let me try one more time. Let me see here. Let's see, where am I? Here we go. Let me try it this way. Thank you for confirming. Find it very strange because right before we started the meeting, we tested it and the audio was coming through. Another individual, right? Another attendee was on, and yes, sounds like a great idea. Thank you, Fabiola. We will send the videos for you to you so that way you guys can definitely watch. Okay. All right. Well, I do apologize for that technical difficulty. Once more, I find it very odd because we did test the audio. Let's click right on along. So most common types of heat pumps. We have air source heat pumps, which are essentially what we commonly come across in our communities or in the field, so to speak. So most common, of course, are within residential applications. There's two types of systems that we come across. Those are the ducted systems. So that is, of course, your dual pack and or your split system, for example. This is a centralized unit that provides heating and cooling through HVAC ducts. And then we have the ductless system. These are more ideal for homes without pre-existing ductwork or perhaps there's inadequate at the end of it, severe inadequate ducting present. These ductless systems provide the zonal heating and cooling. They are also known as the mini ductless split systems. So these are the ones in which mini ductless split systems in which, you know, the condenser, the larger, as you can see in that image to your right, the outdoor condenser sits on ground level outside of the home, and there's this connection that then is heads or connected to these split systems. You can have two split systems just depending on the size of your home and your heating and comfort needs. You can have 2, 3, 4, up to 5, perhaps, right? These are called the heads. These are the indoor air handler units or the split heads that are located inside the home and now are zoning, right? You have one in your bedroom, one in your master bedroom, one in your living room. So these are specifically designed to provide the heating and cooling in specific zone areas. Another common type is the cold climate air source heat pumps. So these are actually designed for colder climates, outside of California, of course, in which those cooling degrees can hit, anywhere from the 20s to 10 and below. They are capable of maintaining efficiency at lower temperatures. They can also deliver 100% heating capacity at weather, again, temperatures as low as 5 degrees Fahrenheit and 76% delivered at 13 degrees Fahrenheit. But anything below those temperatures, the heat pump once more, how we talked about earlier about how it's a smart system. The heat pump may then switch to an electric resistant as a backup heating method, right? To continue to deliver those your heating and or cooling demands and performance ultimately. And they both can be ducted and or ductless systems. Once more, still offered in for those colder climates. Installation and maintenance considerations. These are, but just some high level, more commonly items to consider when you are going out into these communities' homes when it comes to the recommendation of what size, for example, unit are we looking at replacing and or installing, offering our customers or residents. One is going to be proper sizing. We need to ensure that the heat pumps are appropriately sized for the space to maximize efficiency and performance. That is very key. An undersized unit may struggle to maintain desired temperatures, whereas an oversized unit may cycle on and off too frequently, leading to inefficiencies. So when we have these inefficiencies, besides the unit not performing to its design, that can lead to mechanical issues down the road. It can be causing perhaps, for example, it could cause stress on the unit, and or then you're also talking about high utility costs. It may also drive higher electrical rates as well if we do not take proper protocol or an approach, right? An appropriate approach when it comes to properly sizing the units to meet the pre-existing conditions and or needs of the home. Another item to take into consideration when we are recommending to replace and or install these units is electrical upgrades. Certainly some
long haul, or are they local too?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
I'm about to give them a call for when they call me.
Oh, not directed towards me.
Sorry about that.
It's okay, Justina. Electrical upgrades, we also, it's imperative, absolutely critical and crucial that we do address any necessary upgrades to the electrical system in relation to the recommendation ahead in order to be able to ensure that the existing electrical panel is going to be able to sustain the added load, the added electrical load from the heat pump. Sometimes an upgrade may not be needed. Other times, but that of a simple circuit upgrade, right, would suffice. But it's very imperative and important that we take and evaluate the home in its entirety. We do a load calculation. We consider doing a load calculation for what that's going to look like, the impact at the end of the day, for in respect of, right, to tailoring these electrical plans accordingly, per home. This is not a cookie cutter size approach. It's critical that we treat each home and we develop an electrical plan for each home to ensure that at the end of the day, besides the stress on the unit, besides the significant high increase financially cost, right, that this can also be a burden to the customer. We're also talking about safety. Safety is very key when it comes to evaluating the electrical load for any recommendation that we are making at a customer's home. And then lastly on here is the ongoing maintenance. So separating service from maintenance, right? So service for unit is that of in which summer's approaching, I'm getting ready to turn on my AC. The unit's blowing. I can hear my dual pack running, like it sounds like the system's on, but it's not blowing cold air, right? So then that would be a service. That would be more of like a technical issue, something wrong that needs to be troubleshooted, diagnosed, right? It needs to be serviced. I need someone to come out and take a look at that, because of course that's not normal. Maintenance, on the other hand, when we're talking about maintenance, we're talking about that ongoing upkeeping of your maintenance to ensure that it's always performing at optimal efficiency. Once more, mitigating the high utility cost. At the end of the day, you don't want it overperforming, don't want it underperforming. So as with any HVAC system, regularly inspect and clean the filters, coils, and fins to maintain efficiency and performance. That it also includes checking refrigerant levels to ensure that there's no leaks. One recommendation, right, whether it's something that you're a DIY, right, a do-it-yourself person, and then something that you feel competent and confident enough to do on your own, replacing your air filters, washing down your condenser, right, your main unit, your condenser, for example, if you have a split system that's sitting outside on ground level. Or you can also, of course, schedule an annual routine maintenance from a professional for more of the complex tasks in maintaining your units. This is another video, but I presume that there's not going to be any audio. And yeah.
For the North American market extends the reach of energy.
Is there audio? Do you hear audio?
Cooling and heating demands. Heating during cold winter days and cooling in sweltering temperatures. It's Bosch's first air-to-air solution designed specifically for high-efficiency heating in cold climates. And since it's electric, it can help homeowners to reduce their carbon footprint significantly. How does it work? There are basically two units, one outside, one inside. In winter, the outdoor unit absorbs the remaining heat that exists in cold air. Yes, even the coldest air contains some heat, and Bosch efficiently captures that energy into the refrigerant. The refrigerant gets compressed to increase its temperature even more and releases it at the heat exchanger in the air handler inside the home, which in turn distributes that warm air through the whole home for cozy, warm indoor temperatures. In summer, the process is reversed. The air handler absorbs the heat from the air inside, and the heat pump transfers it to the air outside. The compressor circulates refrigerant to the indoor evaporator coil, and the refrigerant absorbs heat as it passes over the indoor air. The resulting cool and dehumidified air then gets blown back into the home. In short, the new inverter heat pump from Bosch offers the heating and cooling solution for almost all weather conditions. Another step forward towards a cleaner energy future. So North America, energized like a Bosch.
So Bosch is just one of those manufacturers who are providing inverted units, heat pump units at the end of the day. Just one of many different manufacturers out there, right, offering the technology for HVAC. We're gonna move slide right into heat pump water heaters. I'm very glad that there was audio on the last video, but in essence, right, not to market, this is not a paid promotion for Bosch, right? Definitely would like to add that disclaimer here. But in essence, really liked how that video, in a nutshell, right, very clean, very clear, provides a good understanding of how a heat pump functions. But moreover, this other layer of piece that may be a concern when we are having these conversations in the field with our communities is that when, I heard when temperatures drop, that unit doesn't work. Well, it does, and this is how, right? So once more, right, these are the tools, this is the education that we're having this ambassador training today to be able to provide you with that knowledge, those tools and those resources, so that you can confidently be empowered to be able to articulate and answer those questions and concerns at the end of the day that community members have when it comes to electrification, specifically that of heat pump technology and how it's still capable of performing even in 5-degree weathers, which we don't get that here in California, but nevertheless, certain climates can't get cold enough. So moving right along into heat pump water heaters. Heat pump water heaters use electricity to move heat from the surrounding air or ground to heat water rather than generating heat directly. So in essence, the main components, right, of this unit consists of, you're talking about compressor, your refrigerant, and a heat exchanger. Air goes in, takes, right, there's the air intake, fan draws in surrounding air to start the process. It moves down into a vapor formation. Air passes through an evaporative coil, turning the refrigerant into vapor. Then it travels to the compressor. A compressor then compresses, right, compression, the vapor, increasing its temperature. It navigates into a heat transfer. The hot vapor then moves to that coil that you're seeing on the diagram. That's built in within the water tank, heating, then causing the surrounding water, right, then heating your water that's stored in the unit. And then it comes back into a liquid form, a liquid return. The cold vapor then returns to its evaporator in a liquid form. So in essence, right, as a whole, the unit, once more, right, designed to be smart, extracts, right, it brings in, it draws in the air from the outside, extracts those air molecules, separates the heat, the cold from the heat, keeps what it wants or what it needs ultimately, which is the hot molecules, dumps out whatever it's not going to utilize, then proceeds in essentially recycling, right? Like taking those hot heat molecules and then running it through now those coils to be able to then generate energy, generate the heat to then heat the water within the storage tank. What are some advantages of heat pump water heaters? Lower upfront costs for customers. We're lowering operating costs overall. It's offering operation control. So once more, how we mentioned, it's a smart system, right? It's going to be able to adjust to the not only the demand that of the home, but also is going to be able to acclimate to weather conditions, reduce emissions. We've talked about the importance of reducing and or eliminating those greenhouse gas emissions by consuming less energy. We have increased resilience. The stored water in a heat pump water heater provides hot water even during an outage, right? So you still have access, you still have access to that hot water. And then also more energy efficiency. Once more talked about the newest and latest modernized units. The technology just keeps improving, always working out the kinks, right, of where we were at 5 years ago. Heat pump technologies has advanced significantly since. So they have indefinitely become much more energy efficient, once more utilizing less energy, and essentially they use 50 to 70% less energy and are still heating the same amount of water. So we talked about performance delivery is there to still meet your demand as comparison to that of a natural gas and or propane fueled system. But once more, the system's not working as hard, thus not requiring as much energy, thus you're not consuming as much energy, hence reducing, right, our energy usage and utility bills. Installation considerations when we are looking at recommending a heat pump water heater for a replacement and or installation in our communities. The number one, of course, upon approach, and contractors, I know you're very mindful already of this when you are approaching a home, indefinitely space requirements. So heat pump water heaters actually need a little bit more space than your traditional natural gas water heaters compared to the conventional water heaters that we're accustomed to, because they actually require and rely on that airflow that's circulating around the unit to be able to function efficiently. They are best installed in areas with adequate ventilation. So we're talking about absolutely your louver door, which you see on that image right there. I know the door is kind of at a glance, but you can kind of see the little lines indicating a louver door. For example, louver door space minimum requirement. You are looking at, the length times width times height. So we are looking at that, almost 3 by 10. Ventilation, proper ventilation is critical and crucial for heat pump water heaters to ensure that they are efficiently extracting those heat molecules from the air. They should be installed in locations where the air temperature remains relatively moderate throughout the year. When taking into consideration perhaps even the existing location that of the water heater unit, you may come across scenarios in which you may actually have to relocate the water heater outside of its existing cavity or existing space to be able to, again, offer perhaps more space, but also better ventilation for that unit ultimately. Lastly, another consideration is going to be noise levels. Heat pump water heaters can be slightly noisier, right? Let's be very mindful on that key term, slightly noisier than conventional water heaters because of how they're designed to operate with the compressor and the fan. Thus, just something to keep in mind, placement away from living areas and or sound isolation measures may actually be beneficial. In my experience, in conversations with community residents who have replaced and fuel switched these appliances, truth be told, I have yet to hear, anyone really that be like one of their, biggest concerns or complaints at the end of the day. It's really being the noise level. And this is why I certainly wanted to highlight that the slightly, right, I'm not certain, I can't assume the same that we all have the same sensitive ears, right, to noise levels. But certainly, it's this other layer of transparency ultimately that we're also having with our community residents, which in turn, when we are being as transparent as we can be with our communities, in turn, we're cultivating that trust. Right, with them, where we're not simply selling them a product just to sell a product and saying it's the best, it's gonna, you're never like just overly selling the product. We also want to ensure that we are properly educating and keeping them informed. So, to minimize those little surprises at the end of the day. So certainly wanted to highlight that little slightly noisier. Let's see if this one has audio.
Water heaters are the unsung heroes of our homes. They labor without pay or pause, stuck in the closet or garage, and most of us don't give them a second thought. That is, until they break. Then we want to replace them fast and get back to our busy lives. We typically just slap in the same old technology, like gas, without considering that we might be missing out on a better alternative: ultra-efficient electric heat pump water heaters. Heat pump water heaters use electricity to move heat from the outside air into your water heater, like a refrigerator running in reverse. They're ideal for California, where our winters are mild. And because they're only moving heat from one place to another and not actually creating heat, they're super efficient. This efficiency can amount to savings on your energy bill. And here's the thing, if we don't start getting rid of our gas appliances, we'll never get ahead of climate change. Here in California, one of the biggest sources of greenhouse gas emissions is from burning gas for heat and hot water. When you switch from gas to electric, you avoid emitting about 11 tons of carbon dioxide over the estimated life of your new water heater. You'd have to plant 11 large shade trees and wait more than 50 years to absorb the same amount of carbon. Not only will you save money and fight climate change, you'll help create a healthier community. That's because gas appliances like water heaters emit carbon monoxide, ozone, and particulate matter, the types of harmful pollutants that can lead to respiratory illnesses. Studies show that getting rid of gas appliances could save thousands of lives and billions of dollars in California every year. So, when your water heater needs to be replaced, consider a more efficient technology. Heat pump water heaters are safer, healthier, fight climate change, and save you money. Bayren makes it easy with a $1,000 rebate when you switch from a gas to electric water heater. Visit bayren.org/HP water heater to learn more.
Awesome.
Water heater.
Induction cooking. So induction ranges. For this particular appliance, induction stoves utilize electromagnetic fields to directly heat pots and pans made of magnetic materials. So in essence, the cooktop, right, whether that be a cooktop or a standalone or slide-in range, the top layer surface of that of the range will require special pots and pans. Essentially, some customers may already have these, unique pots and pans that are already compatible with induction ranges without even knowing. But certainly, one thing to highlight there is that for these induction stoves, they do require not just any pan or pot is going to work, right, to be able to be compatible with these induction ranges because of that electromagnetic field. And there's a purpose behind that, which we'll dive into here. Operations of a cooktop. When the cooktop is turned on, an electromagnetic field is created. This field then induces an electric current in the cookware, which generates the heat. So that is because of this compatibility of the electromagnetic fields on the cooktop. We're talking about a pan that has that same magnetic feature or enhancement in there. The moment that you place that pot or pan onto this induction range, then that is when the range will automatically start inducing and formulating, right, that electric current, thus then heating, thus then of course heating the pot, right, ultimately generating heat. Induction cooktops offer precise temperature controls, as well as have faster heating times compared to gas and traditional electric stoves. What are some benefits of induction cooking? We have improved air quality. We touched on the release, right, that natural gas and or propane, we're emitting these carbon dioxides into the air. Thus, when we fuel switch to an electric resistant or induction cooking, again, cooktop, the cooking top, a slide-in range or standalone range, we are reducing the indoor air pollution, contributing to a healthier, not only kitchen environment, but ultimately home, because we're eliminating, right, we're reducing, we're getting rid of the natural gas and or the propane reliance. Cost savings, reduced energy consumption leads to lower utility bills, and in the long run, of course, cost savings. Talked about improved safety. High performance induction cooktops raise and lower the temperature of food and liquids very quickly. Easy cleanup. Cooktop surface cools off quickly and quicker, minimizing the chances of burnt on or charred messes. I know that's a plus for me. And an energy efficiency. Induction cooking is 90% more efficient, is 90% efficient in heat transfer compared to gas cooking, which is only 40%. So once more, really honing in on the energy efficiency when we're comparing a natural gas and or propane fueled appliance to an all electric. what are some items that we should consider when it comes to installing or replacing and then further maintaining these types of units? So one, of course, proper sizing, ensuring that the cooktop size or range fits in the designated space within the kitchen. Yet it's that ensuring that it's also going to meet the household's cooking needs. Electrical upgrades, so ensuring that the kitchen's existing electrical system can support the induction cooktops power requirements, which may include installing a dedicated circuit. So more often than not, of course, through that of your manufacturing guide, installation guide. Certainly, of course, as I know, you contractors are aware and familiar, is where you would certainly be finding the requirements, right, of the existing voltage that this unit will be requiring. And you would, of course, this is part of your electrical plan in which you would be performing, that assessment of existing of what you're finding existing at the time versus of what essentially is needed at the time of installation or delivering that service. And then lastly, maintenance, ensuring regular inspection and cleaning of your induction cooktop, including, of course, if issues arise beyond just the basic cleaning, then indefinitely recommended to seek professional servicing to address any of the electrical or mechanical problems that may ensue. More of like a tip or a guide, a vent hood is still necessary to remove particular matters produced during cooking. Yet, since there are no harmful fuels from gas combustions, the ventilation rates can be lower. So certainly something to take into consideration when we are in the field and recommending the replacement or installation of our induction cooktops.
Induction cooking generates heat by combining electricity and the magnetic properties found in most pots and pans. The cooktop remains perfectly cool to the touch until you place your induction-compatible pan onto the glass surface to begin the heating process. Once your pan is placed, it will quickly and precisely heat to the selected temperature. Most high-quality pans will work with induction cooking. If you want to be sure, you can test them by holding a magnet to the base. If the magnet sticks, your cookware will work with induction.
All right. So once more, I know that was another Bosch. This is not a paid. This is not a paid. To promote the Bosch. Ultimately, again, the video is simply for that of educational purposes. We're going to slide right into one of the last appliances, right, that we take into consideration in offering our communities, and that's the electric or heat pump clothes dryer. So heat pump dryers use a refrigerant system to absorb the heat from the surrounding air and evaporate moisture from the laundry. So what this in turn, happens, right, is this makes the heat pump dryers more energy efficient because they use the ambient air to extract the moisture, whereas traditional electric dryers rely on electric resistance heating. Some benefits, a couple benefits to highlight on why we recommend to choose or opt for heat pump dryers. They are lower energy consumption. Heat pump dryers use up to 50% less energy than conventional electric dryers. They are eco-friendly. Reduced energy consumption means lower greenhouse gas emissions. So we are also doing our due diligence, right, in contributing to environmental sustainability. And then there's that, if you recall, right, hand in hand of healthy, be the health. Clothes longevity. The heat pump dryers operate at lower temperatures compared to traditional dryers, thus providing gentler drying cycles, which actually contributes to extending the lifespan of your clothes. Installation considerations for this particular appliance. Heat pump dryers typically require more space for proper ventilation and may have a higher upfront cost compared to a conventional electric dryer. However, it's very imperative to note that the energy savings over the long run, right, over time, can actually offset the initial cost. So you're talking about the, return of investment when we're talking about investing in these dryers upfront. Heat pump dryers do not require external venting, unlike the gas dryers and traditional electric dryers, which essentially simplifies the installation process, as well as reduces any associated or added need for additional accessories or equipment. Lastly, maintenancing. Regular maintenance, for example, cleaning the lint filter, ensuring proper ventilation, is critical and essential to maintain the efficiency and performance of heat pump dryers.
Why should you upgrade to an ENERGY STAR certified heat pump dryer? Well, if you want to get technical, let's look at the innovative way it saves energy. Notice there's no heating element and no vent. But why? A heat pump uses technology similar to an air conditioner, but operates in reverse. Air is pulled through a condenser where it is heated before entering the drum. The hot air then absorbs moisture from your clothes. Next, the damp air goes into an evaporator, which removes the moisture and collects or drains it. The real savings happen next, when that same air is pulled back through the condenser to be reheated while still warm. In other words, we save by recycling warm air instead of releasing it through a vent and using energy to heat new cold air. Now that's a good use of hot air. So remember, while on the outside this dryer may look the same as other dryers, it is special because the heat pump technology on the inside uses 50% less energy, and that's 100% great for us and the environment. Find your ENERGY STAR certified heat pump dryer. ENERGYSTAR.gov/HP dryer.
All right. So in essence, we would essentially stop for a quick break here. But if everyone's good, we can speed along if you want to give me some thumbs up. Are we okay with moving? Oh, awesome. I see some thumbs up. Thank you. All right, communicating the value of electrification. Energy, customer education, and engagement. Educating customers is key to the adoption of electrification. So once more, when we are arriving prepared, ready, right, with all those tools and resources, the education, as a contractor or as your field representative, whether that is perhaps your educator, right, your outreach personnel, your installers, your technicians, your installers, they're going to become prepared with that customer education, thus then allowing them or permitting them to have this engagement with the customer. So once more, when we are transparent and we are providing that of, the pros and cons, but ultimately, of course, focusing on that of the pros of where we would be benefiting now and in the long run, that's going to open up the doors to cultivate that trust with our communities and our customers. So once more, educating customers is key to adopting electrification. CBOs, installers, and outreach professionals, yourself, are indefinite trusted messengers. So especially for our disadvantaged, underserved, and under-resourced communities, trust is key to getting in to those doors and you who are already out there, they know you, they're familiar with you, they essentially have cultivated a trust with you already. So it's very imperative, right, that we do come prepared with this new approach, the cleaner energy options, electrification as a whole, and how it is a great benefit ultimately, not only to them, but to that of, right, everyone else as well. When do people generally replace appliances? Some typically, of course, only when something happens or equipment fails or it's essentially reached the end of its lifespan, is when they take into consideration of now essentially being forced, so to speak, right, to replace those appliances. When it comes to emergency replacements, often, right, you're not prepared. Financial could be playing a part as to what you can replace it with. So more often than not, because you know, we're so accustomed, or we have this comfort layer already knowing, we do default to similar systems. Thus, then, of course, prolonging the reliance of that fossil fuel use, and then we're looking to essentially commit for more carbon emissions over the course of time. I did not mean to do that, so I find it odd how it skipped. I think we went from break to customer communication, the value, and then when do people generally replace appliances? I am going to move right into messaging strategies for quality of life improvements through electrification. Some items to continue to consider, right? I feel like we've been repeating this one as well, as improved indoor air quality. We're talking about the comfort within your home. We're looking at consistent temperatures, quiet operations from those appliances. And then there's these other added values that you know, sometimes we fail to recognize, and that's added property value when we are modernizing our homes. That does also actually increase property values. Time of use behavioral education to avoid peak prices. There's the many different tiers that our utilities now offer. So knowing and understanding how the TOU rates work can actually help those consumers save on their electricity bill by using more energy during off-peak times versus when, of course, when the rates are lower. So this is this other layer of piece of education as our due diligence as contractors, CVOs in the field, you know, to just continue to provide consumers, or the customers, the residents, with that added layer of education for them to better understand, you know, how they are, how their behavior towards energy consumption, you know, also plays a factor when we're talking about energy conservation. Time of use behavioral tips, once more appliance use. So running those appliances such as your dishwasher, right, your laundry appliances during off-peak hours, automation, using the smart technologies already built into some of our units, for example, the smart thermostat, right, to manage energy usage. And then preheating and pre-cooling your homes during off-peak times can actually also maintain the comfort within your home. So minimizing those energy costs during peak hours. This is but an example. I know, you know, this is more of an Edison, you know, another utility, Southern California Edison, but in essence, it's more of just to serve as that of a visual of a customer's statement. So customer statement information, they can definitely find details of their TOU currently, of which tier they're on. There they can understand and learn more about their energy consumption, right, their behavior, identify you know, their usage from the mid, off peak, on peak, and that way they can also start working towards implementing those changes in once more their energy behavior. That's another critical piece to touch on for customers. Potential rate changes and their impacts on average customers. We do have essentially 3 scenarios listed on here. There's increase in fixed charges, increase in fixed, one scenario, right, utility company increases its fixed charges from $10 to $15 per month to cover infrastructure upgrades. So bill impact, what does that mean for a customer, and how that's going to affect them? There's a scenario, of course, in which then the customer would want to then reduce their usage so that the fixed charge increase has a kind of like doesn't have as of a large impact for them at the end of the day. Helping customers understand and manage their energy bills. Bill management tips for monitoring and managing usage. We showed you right, an example of what a printed mailed in statement looks like for customers who are not on paperless, let's say. Yet then there's also these other opportunities in which digitally customers can still continue to take control and manage their energy consumptions through conducting regular energy audits. There's other tools using energy monitoring applications, right? Apps that can assist customers in tracking their consumption or usage in real time. And again, identify or analyze their behavior, their patterns, and a more of a course understanding how to read that energy bill, which just essentially ties in or hones in into the customer education piece. We touched on performance and troubleshooting, slightly more maintenance than that of what we separated, right? The difference between a maintenance visit versus a service visit. So a service visit for HVAC, comparing the traditional heating and cooling systems, we're talking about the benefits of maintaining the efficiency at the end of the day of the unit. The cost, typically this results in lower operational costs over time. When we do or are mindful of the sizing and the installation, environmental impact, the electric HVAC system significantly reduced greenhouse gas emissions. So once more, we're talking about the many co-benefits, environmental, safety, health, and in performance. Heat pumps can provide both heating and cooling, offering year-round comfort. The HVAC temperature and airflow, the CFMs, heat produced by a heat pump feels different than that from produced by a furnace or a radiator. So very much understanding temperature regulation. Heat pumps may deliver heat at a lower temperature than gas furnaces, but can still maintain a comfortable indoor environment. Then we're also looking into the airflow. Heat pumps circulate air differently, of course, then often providing a steadier but yet more continuous airflow compared to traditional systems. So think of a heat pump similar to that of the cooling and heating of your car and how its characteristics operate. Different performance characteristics. Electric systems, particularly heat pumps, will perform differently from gas systems, especially during extreme weather conditions. So one thing here, key point to highlight, the importance of patience and openness, right, to new technology, because the long-term benefits include greater energy efficiency, yet also includes lower operating costs. Common troubleshooting steps for minor issues, HVAC heat pumps. So for example, an issue is to reduce airflow. A potential solution that we can walk a customer through is clean or replace the air filters. This will ensure that the outdoor unit is free of obstructions. Perhaps another common issue in troubleshooting HVAC heat pumps is that the system is not heating or cooling effectively. A potential solution, again, one of many that we can recommend customers, is check your thermostat settings and ensure that it is set correctly. Customers may also want to verify that the unit has power and it is actually not in defrost mode. Water heating, understanding and explaining operational modes of heat pumps. So for example, when to set it in hybrid versus a vacation versus keeping it in a heat pump mode. So hybrid water heaters the use only the heat pump, when we use only the heat pump, not feature, but when we have it in a heat pump performance, right, strictly heat pump performance, that is the most energy efficiency, efficient water operating system that you can set that heat pump on. But when we are setting it on vacation, for example, you're gonna be gone for a week or a couple weeks or a month at a time, you can actually set your water heater on vacation mode. So this actually maintains lower temperatures when the home is unoccupied to save energy. And there's this piece of us setting it to a hybrid mode. In hybrid mode, it combines electric resistance heating with heat pump technology to help with the recovery time. It's a little less efficient compared to when you have it in a heat pump, hence why we set those units to heat pump mode to optimize energy efficiency. But the benefits of a hybrid is it's still going to provide hot water quicker while still using less energy than any traditional water heaters ultimately. Common troubleshooting steps for minor issues with heat pump water heaters. Customer may share with you that the water is not heating sufficiently. Solution, we may want to check the thermostat setting at the unit and ensure it is set to desired temperature. More often than not, 120, right, without it being scalding hot. But 120 Fahrenheit is what we set it, and specifically also to manufacturer standards, and verify that the heat pump mode is active. Any issues, any strange noises coming from the unit, we may want to inspect for any loose parts or debris around the unit. If the noise persists, then indefinitely contact a professional for further inspection. Operational tips for heat pumps. We're looking at the thermal settings. We want to set that heat pump water thermostat to an optimal temperature for efficiency and safety. Regular maintenance, right? We touched on regular maintenance, ensuring that the unit, if in an outdoor unit, it is clear of debris, maintaining the airflow efficiency, cleaning or replacing those air filters and the HVAC systems. And then professional servicing, recommended seeking a routine servicing plan when we're for any of your units, whether even if you don't have a heat pump, even if you're just gas, electric, or still servicing your units to maintain optimal performance. Knowing and understanding that, yes, clothes dryers are going to take a little longer when we're talking about heat pump technology. So this is that transparency part that I have touched on when we're engaging with customers. Heat pumps may take a little longer to dry their clothes compared to traditional gas dryers because of their lower operating temperatures. So, as a reminder, they use a refrigerant system to extract the moisture at lower temperatures. So, but there is an end goal to this, right? It'll take a little longer, but ultimately using the dryers or the heat pump dryers significantly, it's going to be significantly less energy. And additionally, of course, it is actually going to improve the quality of your clothes because it is more of a gentle drying. So load management, it's going to also change the behaviors, right? We talked about behaviors and approach. Load management to maximize efficiency and avoid overloading the dryer. The recommendation, of course, is to dry in smaller batches, right? For proper air circulation, it's critical for effective drying. Induction cooking, once more of those top benefits, it heats up fast, no different than it's able to have precise temperature control when cooking with inductions. Operational tips to maximize efficiency of induction cooktops. We do have to use compatible cookware, right? Magnetic bottoms to ensure that it's compatible. Preheat with care. Induction stoves heat up quickly, but so much as they heat up quickly, they actually cool down as well, respectfully. So there's that safety feature. Use appropriate settings, lower heat settings, take advantage of the lower heat settings for simmering and melting. And then once more, there's that other little additive like clean surface regularly. So ensuring that we are keeping the top of that range free of residue, spills, or anything that may interact negatively, right, with the magnetic field of the built-in system. Minor common steps for minor issues for cooktops. If it's not heating properly, ensure that the cookware is compatible and it is correctly placed. issues for uneven heating, use flat bottom cookware and ensure that it is properly, once more, the position plays a role, that it is properly centered on that burner. Addressing common concerns about electrification, common barriers to adoption and potential solutions. The upfront cost of electric appliances is often higher than gas alternatives, posing a challenge for low-income households. Cost-conscious buyers turn to actually secondary markets to purchase used and inefficient appliances. So potential solution when we're talking to customers, right, about adopting, inform homeowners and tenants about the benefits. So this is that key role of what we touched on as as the CBOs and the contractors in these community homes. It's educating. It comes back to ultimately educating the customers, providing them with that full transparency, right, of what to expect. Common barriers. This is just another slide, right, with more examples of common barriers. At the end of the day, right, trust and engagement issues. We talked about the mistrust, how that easily can occur. But when we are arriving prepared, and educated to be able to inform our communities, then that's just going to allow, it's going to open up that engagement for our communities. And I'm going to slide it. I'm just going to skip into these common myths and facts about electrification. Electric systems are always more expensive than gas. A fact, actually, while upfront costs can be higher, long-term operation costs and incentives often make electrification more cost-effective. So when we're looking at these myths versus facts, which we can share with you, it's definitely some great resources, essentially, so that way how to combat those concerns and be able to address those effectively with community residents if they bring up any concerns regarding fuel switching. Examples of return on investment, the ROI on pumps and other electrical appliances, right? We're talking about the initial cost, the investment upfront. When we're looking at the long term, that is the return on investment that we're going to be seeing, or the customers are going to be seeing, ultimately annual savings in energy, maintenance savings, and in total, they can average probably up to 1,000, perhaps roughly probably around averaging 500 to 250 savings. So when we are putting numbers, right, cost saving numbers, ultimately of how much is this really ultimately can this save me, these are great resources or tools to be able to come prepared and be able to educate customers of the anticipated overall savings that they can expect to see when they are fuel switching. We talked about behavioral tips on reducing energy, because it does come back to now community behavior on how we're the ones having to essentially also reprogram ourselves. And then this is actually the last slide for our presentation. It is rebates, incentives, and funding. So certainly very high level of what you may already be familiar with, most, if not all, of the many different types of income qualified programs that are available to our communities and our residents for us to be able to either refer to, or that we can leverage some of these programs to continue to maximize our visit at a customer's home, so that they could take advantage of the many different programs and services that are available to them. We have statewide programs, no different, right? The utility, cap and trade programs that offer not only appliance services, but of course discounted rates applied directly to their bill that they can see. There's financing programs available in which can assist with that financial upfront cost piece. PG&E saving programs, which what's more, you're more than likely already, I presume, familiar with most of these programs that are offered within your respective region of utility leader. Single family program details. We do have the tech programs and the HERA. Just a little kind of an update on the heat pump water heater programs. Currently, as we speak, there are changes being made. So more information to come. I know Jeffrey's online here, and then he can certainly answer any questions maybe offline if we have any inquiries regarding that. But simply wanted to note that just be advised that there are some changes currently happening, and those will be released soon with more information to come. Federal tax credits, there's an application process, credits in which our customers can take advantage of and apply. Other incentive and rebate administrators within California to take into consideration. These are definitely collaborative networks that are formed by local governments to be able to provide these energy programs and services. Community choice aggregations. These are local government programs that allow our cities and counties to procure electricity for their residents from alternative sources. So more information to, just continue to stay tuned and stay on top of, what's essentially coming out of pipeline of new programs, new incentives, new measures. And here it's simply just some tips on navigating incentive programs, research and compare, check eligibilities, regulatory documentations. And of course, something that I just touched on from the previous slide is staying informed. It's certainly something that's imperative for us. Available resources for finding a good contractor. These are just but some of great resources that you can tap into. Thank you, Jeffrey, that you can tap into to be able to access more resource and tools, more educational content, right? Perhaps some videos. And this slide here is simply tips on when to choose the appropriate contractor to be able to bring in to implement these programs and the work that you're doing. Once more, this is a tech contractor training. So any, questions regarding the training in itself, the email is linked or embedded below. It's tech.training@energy-solution.com. Once more, these are great opportunities that are offered to communities at little to essentially no cost. And we strongly recommend, participation and being a part of the initiative. Another highlight is going to be a training hub, contractor training hub, and that's the switches on, which I believe it's the link that Jeffrey just shared in the group chat. Once more, this is certainly a beneficial tool or resource that you can access, and then find other local contractors who are doing similar work, pursuing that common goal that you are as well, that you can work collaboratively with or partner with to be able to achieve these programs. Bring contractor community job opportunities. Once more, job roles, the many different resources in which you can find yourself becoming more involved and gaining access to. Another informative slide. And then essentially any public comments, there is a QR code. It's a community needs assessment survey. If time permits, definitely welcome and encourage input on the community needs assessment survey. And in a nutshell, this concludes our presentation for today. So certainly want to thank everyone. If you do have any questions in lieu of us actually coming offline just because of time sensitivity purposes, you're welcome to drop it into the chat, or you can send any of the emails. You can email them directly to the tech email that was on the previous slide, right? Like, as I mentioned, you can insert them directly into the chat, and then we can always take that question, answer them, and then release almost like a QA sheet for you.
And this is Jeffrey. I'm part of the Tech Clean California program. Thank you so much, Mina, for going through this. Just wanted to highlight a few quick things. That Switches On website has a list of, you can go in and find all the incentive programs. You can actually type in your zip code and it'll pop up. And why I say this is, there was that quick slide that showed the programs including Hero, which just restarted last week. But sometimes these programs also have different geographic territories, they have different budgets, different kind of requirements. And so by going to switches on, you can look up and see which incentive programs are available to you and your constituents. And then the other one that I wanted to highlight was, I think not only do we want to get the information out to residents, why we put information about contractor training is because this is going to be a huge opportunity for jobs and careers for the future, because we know, as Mina mentioned way back in the beginning, California is committed to this. And so I think, of course, we want people to get these into their households, but the big opportunity here hopefully is to our contractors, who often, those who hear about it first are the ones who are able to take advantage. And so that is a big part of our our effort at Tech. And I'll say my role at Tech is to manage equity initiatives, and my one of my primary focuses is making sure that diverse and disadvantaged contractors are hearing about these opportunities first, so that they can be better situated for the near future. So thank you again. I encourage you to email us and stay in touch with us, because we want to continue this effort just beyond just information, but to make sure that we can offer the trainings and work collaboratively with you all to make sure the benefits accrue to everybody.
Thank you, Jeffrey. All right, everyone. So that concludes, once more, thank you very much for your time today. That concludes today's training, and I look forward to seeing you all around. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
You're welcome.